The message came in while I was sitting alone at my desk, waiting for the rest of the board to rejoin the room. I had stepped out of the meeting for a glass of water and didn't bother closing the door behind me. The office was quiet in that late afternoon way. Soft air conditioning, distant traffic, muted voices somewhere down the hall. From the windows on the 38th floor, I could see Elliott Bay and the ferries cutting slow white lines through the water. My phone buzzed once on the desk. I assumed it was my father asking something ordinary. He usually texted about paperwork or reminders I already knew. I picked up the phone and read the message once. Then again. The market crashed. The trust fund is gone. You'll need to take care of yourself now. I didn't respond. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, reading it a third time. Back in the conference room, a dozen people were waiting on me to return so we could finish reviewing a 9-figure acquisition. Lawyers, bankers, advisors, all talking calmly about numbers that most people never hear spoken out loud. I stayed where I was. The timing was almost precise. The text arrived at 2:41 p.m., right as we were finalizing signatures. I set the phone face down on the desk. Outside, a low cloud bank drifted in from the sound. The glass reflected my own outline back at me. Still, neutral, composed. The view cost my company more each month than my parents' mortgage ever had, but I'd chosen it because it helped me think clearly. What my father didn't know, what he couldn't know yet, was that the trust fund hadn't crashed, and it hadn't been his. 5 years earlier, when I was 31, I had started a cloud security firm out of a rented co-working space with 2 laptops and money I'd saved doing contract work at night. Around that same time, my parents were quietly unraveling financially. My father's logistics business was failing. Medical bills were stacking up. My younger brother was about to start graduate school with no real plan to pay for it. I never announced my success as it came. I solved problems instead. Bills disappeared, loans were settled, tuition was covered, and eventually the family trust, something my father spoke about with pride but rarely with clarity, was rebuilt. I let him believe it was his recovery story. Back in my office, I picked up the desk phone and dialed a number I rarely used out loud. "Private Client Services," a calm voice answered. "Hi, Daniel," I said. "It's Mara." He recognized me immediately. He always did. "I need you to send the full trust account statements today," I said. "All contributions, all sources, no summaries." There was a pause, not concern, just confirmation. "I understand," he said. "I'll send them this afternoon." When I hung up, I didn't feel angry or relieved, just settled. Decisions like this don't come with emotion when you've already carried them for years. I returned to the conference room, nodded once, and took my seat. We finished the meeting on schedule. No one noticed anything was different. An hour later, my assistant stopped by my office. "Your dad called," she said gently. He sounded confused. I nodded. "Let him read the documents first." When she left, I looked back out at the water and waited. That was the moment everything stopped being theoretical, and the phone hadn't rung yet. While I waited, I opened the drawer on the right side of my desk and took out the thin folder I almost never touched. Inside were copies of wire confirmations, tuition invoices, medical statements, and trust summaries going back years. Not originals, those lived in encrypted storage, but enough to remind me how quietly everything had been handled. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, no emotion, just order. I hadn't planned to ever show them to my family. When my company began to stabilize, I told myself I would explain everything eventually. After the next funding round, after the next contract, after things felt less fragile. But success doesn't arrive with a bell you can hear. It just keeps moving, and if you don't interrupt it, years pass. I slid the folder back into the drawer and closed it. The truth was simpler than the story I'd built around it. I hadn't hidden my life out of fear or ego. I'd learned early that sharing good news with my family often turned into a negotiation. Advice followed celebration. Doubt followed praise. Questions piled up until the joy thinned out. So I stopped offering updates. At family dinners, I talked about work in general terms. I said things like projects and clients and long weeks. My father nodded and told me stability mattered more than ambition. My mother worried I worked too much. My brother asked if I'd ever consider something safer. I let them think I was doing fine. Not impressive, just fine. Outside my office, the building shifted into late afternoon mode. Elevators chimed. A cleaning cart rolled by. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Life continuing normally while a different timeline prepared to intersect mine. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my brother, Lucas. I let it ring once before answering. "Hey," I said. "Did you hear from Dad?" he asked. He sounded tense, like he was pacing. "He says the trust fund took a hit. He didn't explain much, just said things were unstable." "I heard," I said. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I've got 2 semesters left. If that money's actually gone..." "It's not," I said calmly. There was a pause on his end. "What do you mean it's not?" "I mean your tuition is covered," I said. "Nothing changes for you." He exhaled, but confusion lingered. "How can you be sure?" he asked. Dad sounded serious. "I am sure," I said. "That's all you need to know right now." He didn't argue. Lucas had always trusted me more with logistics than explanations. After we hung up, I stood and walked to the window. The ferries had slowed for the evening schedule. Lights were beginning to appear along the waterfront. I thought about the first time I'd rerouted money into the trust. I'd been sitting on the floor of my apartment, laptop open, calculator beside me, realizing I could fix a problem without creating a conversation. At the time, it felt efficient, almost kind. I didn't anticipate how heavy quiet responsibility could become when it stretches across years. At 4:18 p.m., my assistant's name lit up my screen. "They've been delivered," she said. "Certified, email and physical copies." "Thank you," I said. "If my father calls again, put him through." I sat back down and folded my hands on the desk. There's a point before difficult conversations where you're no longer preparing. You're just waiting. Preparation is movement. Waiting is acceptance. I didn't rehearse anything. Facts don't need rehearsal. Outside, the sky darkened another shade. Inside, my phone was silent. Then, finally, it rang. I answered on the first ring. "Mara," my father said. His voice didn't sound angry. It sounded unsteady, like he was trying to keep his balance while standing still. "I just received some paperwork from a bank I don't recognize." "I know," I said. "That's why I asked them to send it." There was a short silence. I could hear papers moving on his end. Not frantic, careful. "These statements," he continued slower now, "they show deposits going back years, large ones, and your name keeps appearing." "Yes," I said, "because they came from me." "That doesn't make sense," he replied. "You work remotely. You've always said things were modest." "They were," I said, "until they weren't." Another pause. I didn't rush it. "I need you to tell me exactly what this means," he said. "No soft explanations." So I didn't soften anything. "For the last 5 years," I said, "the trust has been funded primarily through entities I control. The account never crashed. There was no loss. The alert you received was a routine volatility notice." His breathing changed, slower, more deliberate. "You're saying the money is still there?" "Yes." "And you're saying," he added carefully, "that it didn't come from my investments?" "No," I said. It didn't. I waited. Silence isn't absence. It's space. Finally, he spoke again. "Who are you working for, Mara?" I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment, not to dramatize it, just to choose accuracy over comfort. "Myself," I said. "I founded a company 5 years ago. I run it." He didn't interrupt. It's a cloud infrastructure firm, I continued. Enterprise level. We work with large clients, financial institutions, logistics platforms, media companies. How large? He asked quietly. Large enough to fund the trust, I said. And everything else. I could hear my mother in the background now, asking questions I couldn't make out. My father muffled the phone and spoke to her in a low voice. When he came back, he sounded older. You should have told us, he said. Eventually, I replied. Yes. Why didn't you? Because every time I tried to explain something important growing up, I said evenly, it became something I had to justify. I didn't want to justify this. The line went quiet again. I've been telling people, he said after a moment, that I rebuilt that trust through discipline, through learning. I know, I said, and all this time, I repeated, I was making sure it worked. He didn't sound angry. He sounded small. I didn't correct him. Power doesn't need reinforcement when it's already clear. After a while, he asked, What happens now? I didn't answer immediately. I opened my desk drawer again and touched the folder inside without looking at it. Now, I said, you finish reading the documents, then we talk again, with everyone present. With your brother? He asked. Yes. And your mother? Yes. He exhaled. All right. When the call ended, I didn't move right away. I stayed seated, hands still folded, listening to the quiet return to the room. The first shift had happened, not through confrontation, not through emotion, but through paperwork and timing. I checked the time. There was still light outside, and there were still steps left to take. I didn't call anyone back that evening. That was a choice. After the office emptied, I stayed behind and cleared my desk the way I always do when something personal crosses into work. Laptop shut down, papers aligned, chair pushed in, small actions that return order before the next move. At home, I made tea and didn't turn on any lights except the one over the kitchen counter. The city outside my windows carried on as usual. Sirens far away, someone laughing on the street below. I let the normal sounds remind me that nothing urgent was actually happening. Urgency is often just noise. Around 9 p.m., my brother texted. Dad says we need to talk, all of us. I replied with one word. Tomorrow. I slept without trouble. The next morning, I didn't improvise. I don't when stakes are emotional. I followed steps. Step 1, confirm records. Before leaving for the office, I logged into the trust portal and verified balances, timestamps, and contribution summaries. Everything matched what had already been sent. No discrepancies, no ambiguity. Step 2, neutral setting. I booked a private conference room at a quiet hotel near my parents' house. Not their living room, not my office. A place with clean lines, no memories, no emotional ownership. Step 3, third-party confirmation. I asked Daniel to be available by phone during the meeting, not to speak unless asked, just present. Control doesn't require volume. It requires structure. When I arrived, my parents were already there. My father stood when he saw me, then sat back down again, unsure which response fit anymore. My mother held her purse in her lap with both hands. My brother leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes tired but alert. No one spoke right away. I set my phone on the table, screen down. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to clarify. My father nodded. That would help. I slid a thin envelope across the table. Inside were printed summaries, nothing flashy, dates, totals, names of entities. I funded the trust in stages, I said. The first year was stabilization, the second was growth. After that, it was maintenance. My mother looked at the papers but didn't touch them. You paid for my treatments, she said softly. Yes. And Lucas's tuition? Yes. And the house refinancing? My father asked. Yes. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Not angry. Processing. "I thought I was fixing things," he said. "You were doing what you could," I replied. "I just expanded the margin." My brother finally spoke. "How big is the company?" I told him, not with adjectives, with numbers. No one interrupted. "And you didn't say anything because—" my mother asked. "Because silence was simpler than managing expectations," I said, "and because help doesn't always need a signature." That landed harder than I expected. My father looked down at his hands. "I told you to be careful," he said quietly. "I told you not to rely on that money." I met his eyes. I never did. That was the moment the room shifted, not because of pride, because the rules changed. We sat there for a while after that. No one rushed to fill the space. Eventually, my father straightened the papers into a neat stack. "What do you need from us now?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Outside the window, someone pulled the curtains in a nearby room. The afternoon light dimmed. "I need honesty," I said, "and boundaries." They waited. "And I need you to understand," I continued, "that this conversation doesn't give anyone control over my decisions." No one argued. That's when I knew the escalation had done its work. We ended the meeting without hugs or conclusions, just quiet agreement. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed once. Daniel. Available if needed. I didn't call him. Not yet. The hardest part was still ahead. The final conversation happened 2 days later, in my parents' dining room. I chose the time, late morning, after coffee, before fatigue could turn emotions sharp. The table was cleared except for a single folder I placed at the center. No stacks, no extras, just what mattered. My father sat across from me, posture stiff, hands folded. My mother stayed beside him, close but quiet. Lucas took the chair nearest the window, watching everything without speaking. I opened the folder and slid out 3 documents. "The trust statement," I said, "a contribution timeline, and an authorization letter." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain more than necessary. "The trust will continue exactly as it has," I said. "Nothing changes operationally, but there are new rules." My father nodded slowly. "All right. First," I said, "no public commentary, no advice to relatives, no storytelling about recovery strategies." He winced just slightly. "Second," I continued, "no access requests. You don't need logins, you don't need dashboards. If you have questions, you ask me." He exhaled. "That's fair." "Third," I said, "no guilt. This wasn't charity, it was responsibility." My mother finally spoke. "We never wanted to be a burden." "I know," I said. "That's why this worked." Silence settled over the table again, not tense, just real. My father cleared his throat. "I told you you'd need to stand on your own," he said. "I was wrong." I didn't respond right away. "Correction isn't always required." "I thought I was protecting you," he added. "You were," I said. "Just not in the way you imagined." Lucas leaned forward. "So what happens when people ask? When this becomes public?" "When it does," I said, "you tell the truth without adding commentary. If you're unsure, you say you don't know. That's not weakness." My father nodded. Once. Decisive. "I can do that." I closed the folder and stood. The meeting was over because there was nothing left to negotiate. As I reached the door, my father spoke again. "Mara," he said, "I'm proud of you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was enough. Outside, the air felt lighter than it had in years, not because something had been won, but because nothing was being held anymore. That afternoon, I returned to work and reviewed IPO timelines with the same focus I always had. Systems don't pause for personal milestones, but something inside me had shifted. The truth was no longer pending. It was documented and accepted. The confirmation didn't come from my family. It came from the outside. 3 weeks later, my assistant forwarded me an email from a financial reporter asking for comment on an upcoming public filing. Nothing sensational, just routine verification. The kind that only happens when paperwork has already been reviewed by people who don't care about feelings. That's when everything locked into place. The trust remained intact. The accounts stayed exactly where they were. The payments continued without interruption. Lucas finished his semester without a single invoice going unpaid. My mother's follow-up treatments were scheduled, approved, and settled automatically. No drama, no surprise calls. My father didn't mention the trust again. At first, I noticed the change in small ways. He stopped offering financial advice at family gatherings. When relatives asked vague questions about investments, he redirected the conversation or said he was focusing on other things now. Once, I heard him say, "That's not really my area anymore." He didn't look embarrassed when he said it, just factual. A month later, the public filing went live. My name appeared exactly where it should have. Founder, majority shareholder, executive officer, numbers followed, valuations, ownership percentages. The language was dry and precise, no adjectives, no praise. That night, my parents called. "We saw it," my mother said. "All of it." "And?" I asked. She paused. "It explains a lot." My father came on the line. "I should have asked better questions," he said. "I should have listened more." "I didn't need listening," I replied. "I needed space." "I understand that now," he said. That was it. No apology tour, no emotional accounting, just acknowledgement. 2 months after that, the company rang the opening bell. I stood between colleagues who'd been with me since the early days, people who remembered the first server outages, the long nights, the quiet wins no one else saw. Cameras flashed, applause came and went. My family watched from the balcony. Afterward, there was a dinner. Simple, controlled, no speeches, no toasts planned in advance. At one point, my father raised his glass anyway. "To clarity," he said, "and to knowing when to step back." No one clapped. We just drank. Later that night, back home, I placed the old folder from my desk drawer into a storage box and labeled it with the year. Then I closed the lid. Some things don't need to stay within reach once they've done their job. The trust fund never disappeared. Neither did my role in it. What changed was that no one pretended anymore, and that made everything quieter. That's how resolution usually feels. A few weeks after everything settled, I found myself doing something ordinary on a Sunday morning. I was at home, wiping down the kitchen counter, moving slowly, letting the quiet stay quiet. The windows were open just enough to let in the sound of the city waking up. Delivery trucks, footsteps on the sidewalk, someone walking a dog and talking softly into a phone. There were no calls scheduled, no documents waiting, no explanations pending. That was new. I brewed tea and stood by the sink while it steeped, watching the steam rise and fade. For years, my life had been built around anticipation. What would happen if someone found out? If a question came too early? If silence finally failed? Now there was nothing to brace for. My phone buzzed once. A message from my father. "Your mom wants to know if you're coming by next weekend. No agenda, just dinner." I smiled, set the phone down, and let the tea finish. Later that afternoon, I organized a small shelf in the hallway closet. Old folders went into labeled boxes. Papers I no longer needed were shredded. Not because I had to, but because it felt right to close the loop physically, not just emotionally. That's what clarity looks like in real life. Not celebration, not relief, just clean edges. As I worked, I thought about how many people carry quiet responsibility without recognition. How many family dynamics run on assumptions that no one ever checks. How often the person holding everything together is the one being told they'll be fine on their own. A friend called that evening. Someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. She was nervous, asking careful questions about a situation in her own family. Money, expectations. Silence. I listened. I didn't rush her. Some stories don't end when the truth comes out. They just make room for the next one. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it felt familiar in any way, you're not alone. If you'd like to hear more real stories like this, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this channel reach people who might need it. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read more of them than you might think. 2 more stories will be on screen next, ones you might want to save for later. Take care of yourself, and take care of what's yours.